Wow, here we are with another amazing conversation
with ourselves.
No, this discussion with Paul Zolman is fascinating on a bunch of different levels. I love the way we get into the iconography of what he's doing, the art. He spent a lot of time and energy on it, and then you get this feeling that he's done this a lot, because one of the things he does is he has this game that's really great. And you'll find out about the game when you listen to the podcast. But there was this level where, of course, I stepped in and was like, can we go a little deeper? And you followed suit, Greg. I really love that he was willing to play at that level.
Yeah. Yes. I was going to say something snarky that I had been planning for the past 5 minutes, and we took a different turn. Anyway, yes. I admired him for that too. In fact, on how we meet some of these people is through this platform called Podmatch, and you can leave reviews for. And what I said is, it was a very good mix of this game he developed and his own experience, and getting into kind of the personal of his experience.
Yeah, when you go on a ride on a moped with us, it gets deeper than a lot of people will do. And I love that he was willing to go there. And we find out some very interesting things about his life and about the challenges of being a parent, and how he decided at one point in his life that he was going to change the way he showed up. And this game that he invented, or that he came up with, is one of the main ways for him to do that. And then, as you, the listeners, might find, there's an opportunity for you to do the same.
So we want you to pop open a can of adrenochrome soda, subscribe, leave a review, get ready for the ride.
Sis, hallo?
Blijven.
Zeker wegen them.
Yo je iets niet, joh.
Two outlaws on the lam, taking the back roads through America.
You can't drink enough coffee for this show.
And now it's time for Monday Madness with the Moped Outlaws, Greg and Mark.
Good morning, and welcome to another edition of the Moped Outlaws podcast. Today, our guest is Paul Zolman from the company Roll of Love, rolloflove.com. And we are going to get to know Paul and a little bit about his journey, and then also roll the dice on love for our lives to get more generous. I've done a little bit of research, nothing too extensive, Paul, so I kind of have the lay of the land. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Mark. Pleasure to be with you and Greg.
Great. And one of the things we want to safeguard our audience for is that there may be occasions where Greg has to pop in and out for a minute. He is working on a special new moped engine design in the back room, and occasionally the hamsters that are running around the wheel get loose and have to be put back in the engine.
Very sad. Very sad. Yeah.
Yeah. So I watched a few podcasts about you, Paul, so I know a little bit about your history. I'm curious about how you came up with this idea and what the Roll of Love is. And can you just sort of explain how it came about and what it is?
So, Mark, I'm a big believer in that necessity is the mother of invention. And I really felt a necessity in my life to overcome anger. I had a lot of residual anger from an abusive childhood. And it came to a point that when I was introducing a woman that I was dating to my sister-in-law and my brother, that my sister-in-law pulled her aside and said that the only emotion that the Zolman family learned growing up was anger. At first I did not. I said, then it made me mad. I thought,
I'd be mad at her too. What's she doing giving away that secret to your date?
Exactly. But the whole idea, Mark, is that she's an outsider looking in. And I thought, if that's true, and it was obviously busted, if that's true, I have an opportunity here to change something that's happened generationally for a long, long time. A lot of us get something passed on generationally not genetically, but generationally from our parents, from our grandparents, and it's just passed on. One thing that was might be interesting to your audience is that I had a grandfather that had 9 children with his first wife. She passed away after that 9th child. He came to Montana and married the second wife, was a school teacher, never been married before, had 10 more children with her. And so when my father's number 6 of that second 10, and when my father was 10 years old, that grandfather passed away. So a lot of abandonment there, a lot of mental issues. But on top of that, my father was born in 1922. This grandfather passed away in 1932. So now you've got the financials right in the very middle of the Great Depression. You've got financial issues. And so my father didn't have a chance to finish school. He made it through 8th grade. That's it. And so there's educational issues too. All those combined, and it just was too much pressure. My father became a truck driver, and it's just one of those things that generational stuff just happens. So to answer your question, how did this all come together? I started deciding that I needed to read more about love because I grew up angry. I had this little angry background, angry culture that I grew up in, angry humor, angry sarcasm, just angry everything. It's just a culture all by itself. Vocabulary, whatever you want to call it, it's all together there. And I thought, I've got to refresh this. I've got to do something different. Started reading The Color Code, which is a book about loves and how different people might have different colors. It was okay. I actually settled on the love languages because Dr. Chapman is a reverend. He said that the love languages reconciled more or less to the life of Jesus Christ. And might want to just at this point in time go through the love languages just to say what they are for the audience members that might not know what they're.
Yeah.
The whole. Yeah. Go ahead.
Touch, gifts, words, acts, and time. These are based on this book, as you said, I'm sorry, what's the author's name again?
Dr. Gary Chapman.
Dr. Gary Chapman. And it's all about how we receive. There's this kind of assumption in the book that there's a primary or a secondary or even tertiary level of ways that we're capable of receiving. And what is our love language? What actually reaches us inside this complex human shell? And
so the whole idea here is that, what I picked up from that, Mark, is that if I guess what your love language is and cater to that, or Greg, if I guess what your love languages are, and we're going to be buddies, if I cater to that, I'm a bad guesser. And it wasn't happening. And you can know what my background was. My background wasn't love, and that didn't sound like love to me either. It just wasn't working for me because of that I'm just a bad guesser. So the next thing Dr. Chapman has in the book is that, well, if you take this survey, then you can find out what your love language is. What am I supposed to do with that? Advertise? Hello, Greg. Yeah. I'm gifts. What do you have for me today? I mean, how it's just awkward.
Right.
Both of those didn't work. But I remember, Mark and Greg, I remember when I was a kid that when our family, as dysfunctional as it was, when we get together, we played games. And it kind of was cohesive for us. We still had the smack talk, still had the put downs and everything, still had all that from the angry culture, but we were together. So I thought, maybe I can make this a game. So I contacted Dr. Chapman, asked him if he was licensing those little pictures, the little icons that he had for each one of the love languages. His attorney wrote me back and said, no, we're not doing that right now. Frankly, I was grateful because they were kind of ugly. They were very dated, and I didn't want to use them anyway.
So it sounds kind of angry, Paul. You they told you no, so you decided to get back at them by making your own.
Well, no, I just got back at them, telling them they're ugly anyway. So that was my getting back at them. Now I went to an attorney here locally, Mark, and this attorney said that theory, like the love language theory, is not copyrightable. Application is. So they had not made it a game, so that application would work. It was something that I was able to get the copyright for, almost immediately. Created a die, put the love language symbols that I made on a die. Here I'm holding the die.
Service.
Yeah, it has a guy holding a tray.
Words.
Those are the words. That's right.
Gifts.
Money.
Oh, time. Oh. That's time. That's an hourglass.
Yeah, it's an hourglass. Yeah.
Money.
Looks like money.
Touch.
Yeah.
That's touch.
And then the last one.
Gifts.
So 5 love languages, 6 sides on the die. The last one is my own creation, and it's what I call surprise me. A lot of people in the area where I live just a couple hours north of Las Vegas, so a lot of people call it dealer's choice. Call it whatever you want. There's just 2 instructions. You roll the die every day. That's the love language you practice giving away all day that day. So what I found out is that I can't bid love to come my way. So what is my lane? All I can do is give it away and then be able to understand and react appropriately when it comes my way. Those are the only 2 things I have control over. And so that's kind of the whole theory there, is that you're giving it away all day long without any expectation. Whatever you've rolled, you're giving that away all day long without any expectation of it coming back to you. But trusting that you're practicing the law of the harvest, you're planting that seed, or karma, or the law of attraction, whatever works for you, you're sending that boomerang out, it's coming back to you someday.
Got it.
If you send anger out, you get immediate reaction, immediate return on that investment. Who wants that? Why would you make somebody have a bad day? Greg, you got
so the woman that you were dating when this seed was planted of what your one family emotion was, is she still in your life?
She's not. We did get married, but it did not work out after about 4 or 5 years. Just didn't work out.
So how does the role of love play in that scenario?
Well, for a while, when you've been married twice, Greg, you can have what you call your favorite ex-wife. And so for a while, she was my very favorite ex-wife. So that's how it played out.
So I'm assuming the game didn't exist during the marriage. Is that correct?
It did not. So it was the thought came, and I was doing my research. It was during the time period that I was still having those anger things. And what I recognized, Mark, and it's a very good question. What I recognized is that during this time frame, I still had those anger things. I still was doing my research with Dr. Chapman, that sort of thing, still trying to figure out what would work and develop the die. And while I was doing that, I realized that what other people did annoyed me, and then somebody else would do something to annoy me, and somebody else would do something to annoy me, and somebody else, and pretty soon I'd be so annoyed I'd flash, and it's just that stacking and flashing that I realized that my father did it, my brother did it, I do it, and so I had to replace that behavior with something else. So after I created the die, I actually created it on a big block of wood, and I put different icons on it, and the block of wood had the sharp corners, wouldn't roll very well. So I did another one. I rounded off the corners, and even rounding off the corners, it was rolling, but it wasn't rolling very well. So I still was rolling it in the prototype format while I'm still trying to do the artwork, while I'm still trying to do all these other things. But it still really is not the replacement. It was the start of it. And it happened after the demise of that second marriage as well.
So that's where I kind of want to dig in. Let's just setting the game aside for a minute, which I do want to get to.
Of course.
The catalyst, it appears, is the recognition that you were not experiencing what you wanted to experience in relationship, and that you were taking responsibility for that and doing an excavation of why for yourself. Is that accurate?
Exactly. So it took me a long time to realize the responsibility there. And it's a great point that you're bringing up, Mark, because I realized I was 35 years old when I realized that that I got to stop blaming my father for all these awkward moments socially. You get angry in a social situation. How's that going to look? You can't bring that back. I mean, you've seen people that get angry and upset, and then everybody's staring at them. And it's just,
I've been that person.
Oh my goodness, me too. So here we are. And what do? How do you retract all that? And how do you repair all that? And then think of it in your family relationship. How do you retract and repair all that? And that was just that understanding. By the time I'm 35, my father's been dead 7 years. I'm still blaming him.
Right.
And what I found out is that if you can blame someone for your problems, you're the victim. You blame someone else for your problems. You don't have to do a thing. You do not have to change. You can stay right where you're at and feel so comfortable blaming someone else for your problems. But when you take responsibility, it's a whole different scenario.
So you weren't able to arrive at an effective use of that philosophy during the marriage, and it was after the breakup that you began to like learn to try to cultivate those things in your life.
That's exactly right, Mark. And it, I'm a Christian. I don't know if you are or not, but that doesn't really matter. But many people have heard of the Last Supper, and Jesus at the Last Supper asked this questions of all the disciples, not just the one that betrayed him, but all the disciples. He said, one of you will betray me. And one by one, each one of the apostles said, Lord, is it I? Lord, is it I? And once I incorporated that into my own repertoire, I started taking responsibility that, yeah, it is you. What are you going to do about it? And then, yeah, it is you. And so every day it's just yeah, it is you. And what are you going to do about it? And that really kind of is that buffer that I needed to really polish my personality, polish the things that I'm trying to accomplish.
So how does romantic love fit into your life right now?
I'm married, so it fits what's well with my wife. Obviously, that's really the only appropriate place for that. But romantic love is one of those loves that we're really not talking about now in this book, in the die specifically. Because what we're trying to do, what we're trying to accomplish with this is just get the general feeling of love, the lower level of love. When you talk about service, when you talk about the words, you talk about time, touch, and the gifts, those are really low level, entry level types of love. That's all it is. When you're talking about the higher loves, the compassion, and you're talking about the charity, and you're talking about the empathy, those are the higher laws of love. And what happens with the lower laws, practicing the lower laws will get you there, just like practicing these lower laws of love will get you to the point that you can have that romantic or intimate relationship with your significant other.
So is the language that is in your game and is in the book that you read a part of your dialect with your wife in everyday communication with each other? Like when challenges arrive, do they arrive between you two, or do they come up and together as partners you work out the challenge?
I think there's a combination. Great question, Greg. There's a combination of both. That sometimes I can resolve it on my own because of what I'm doing, and I'm watching for opportunities to love all day long while I'm rolling the die. Love in that way. I'm watching for people to light up. When they light up, it's one of their primary love languages. And so you're trying to help people have a better day. And as you do that, you understand the love language is a whole lot better. Over a 30-day period of doing that, you will have gone through and given away all 5 love languages. So you become what I like to call a love language linguist. Sexy title. I know you want it. You can get it. You just have to practice.
So I think this is important because there's a piece here we haven't really fully illuminated, which is this idea of the playing of the game is not about getting.
Correct.
It's about giving.
It's
so
not,
can
no
you
longer
describe
about
the game a little bit and how it works this way?
Yeah, so it's no longer about me. It's not about me, and I'm not waiting, sitting in my chair, sitting in my lounge chair, sitting on my couch, waiting for love to come to me. It's not that at all. All you're doing, this is active. This is not passive. This is actively sending it out with the expectation, with or without an expectation, but knowing and trusting that someday it'll come back to you. You get paid when you're making someone's day. You'll get that good feeling that, I brightened their life today. They're going to go to their circle of influence and brighten the lives of those that surround them. So that's the whole idea. Learn the direction and stay in your lane is all it is. You can't.
So when you step back, how do you derive what lane? How does that work?
So the lane is, what can you do yourself? What are you projecting? Who are you going to be? That's your lane. You can't decide for someone else what they're going to do. And if they don't do it, you can't get upset at that because it's their choice. And it's so stop the criticism. Stop the saying, what's wrong with you? Why did you do that? Stop that whole activity. It's not your call. And it's not your judgment. That's out of your lane. So your lane is, today I'm going to serve. Today I'm going to send out nice words. Today I'm going to spend time with people. I'm going to put my phone away. I'm going to be present when I'm with people. Today
So is the method by which you decide that, you just roll the die and decide, today I'm going to do acts of service. Today I'm going to do words of
correct. So the die decides for you. So it's almost a divining tool. Exactly.
Yeah. So you're playing this game of, how can I show up with more love in my heart and more generosity and become the source?
Absolutely.
And that's a high level game in my book. I love that. And when did that idea pop into your head? When did divine inspiration give you that insight?
Well, as I mentioned, it took a couple years to just do the artwork. 2 full years just to do the artwork for each side of the die. I wanted it to be as good as possible. I wanted it to be as recognizable as possible. That you see, there's no words on the die anywhere, not on any of the sides. It's all pictures. So I wanted the pictures to be universal. And so I started when I was married to the second wife. So I started shortly after that experience of introducing that woman to my brother and sister-in-law. It was shortly after that I'm starting to get things together, starting to figure out, how can I make my life and the lives of those around me a whole lot better. I felt like I had a lot of catching up to do, a lot of anger to disperse, a lot of love to start giving.
Did you have a journey with regards to mental health or therapy or coaching that helped you get to this place?
I have been to counseling before, and it to me I felt like it was stirring up the pot, stirring it up, and it almost was like marriage breaking counselors to me is what it felt like, just because I felt like they're focused on the problem. And let me just explain that to you, Mark, because the focus, I use a magnifying glass to define the focus. And when you magnify things that are wrong in your marriage, you magnify things that are wrong with somebody else, guess what? It grows, it gets bigger. Why would you choose to do that? Why would anyone choose to do that? Why are we doing it to people in the newspaper? Why are we doing it to the faults of everybody around us? And that's the change. So
that's an interesting point. But my question is, do you think that any of the work that you've done as a personal development work is the result of any kind of assistance you receive from mental health professionals or coaching or any kind of marriage counseling or anything like that?
It's not, and only in the adverse sense, like I'm talking about.
Got it.
Only in the sense that they were focusing on the mistakes of the marriage. They were focusing on that, and to me, that magnified it. That made it even larger than life. And so, basically, I saw that. I didn't know what to do about it, but I saw it, and so I stopped the counseling at the time.
And you found a way. Then that became the inspiration for the game.
Correct.
So that was your solution to this complicated problem, was to find a way to become generative of these emotional states as opposed to angry.
Correct. Find a way to look for the positive. There's in the yoga class, at the end of a yoga class, the women, men, I guess, as well, put their hands together like this. The teacher will say namaste. And it's a Sanskrit dialect. It's a word from the Sanskrit dialect in northern India, but a Hindu interpretation is my favorite. The God in me sees the God in you, or the divine in me sees the divine in you. Mm-hmm. That's exactly what we're trying to accomplish. We're trying to see the good of everyone. And while we're seeing the good of everyone, we're practicing, we're talking about it, we're identifying it. And I've found a lot of people don't even see it themselves. Some things that you see that's good about somebody, they might not even see it. They're too close to the forest to see the trees, so to speak. But when somebody identifies it for them, they say, oh, and you just made their day.
So this game helps people cultivate how their day is going to play out.
It does. It absolutely
So how
does.
do you imagine people using the game? What are the instructions?
2 instructions. Roll the die every day. Practice that love language to everyone all day that day. And I say to everyone because the creation, I became single, and the creation of it was part of from when I was single before the second marriage. So I was single. I had to practice to everyone, and really didn't have the significant other. When the die came along, did not have that significant other to practice it with. So I said, well, who am I going to do it to? And it just came to me, I need to practice it to everyone. I like that a lot better because I thought that Dr. Chapman's significant other was pretty exclusive. And I thought, you know what? That's a part-time job. I don't know anybody, Mark or Greg, I don't know anybody that is with their significant other 24/7. Nobody. Not a soul. So instead of having that be a part-time job, make it a full-time job. Make it part of your character to just send love out all day long. Consistency.
Yeah.
This might have been brought up in my absence, but I'm wondering, has this changed your relationship with your family? Your brother that you mentioned? Actually, brother, yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that it's helped me do what some of my older brothers have been able to do on their own. And I'm not sure how they did it, how they distanced themselves. They're not loving all the time, but they're sure a lot more loving than it was when we're family together as siblings. And they're a lot more loving to their spouse, and they're a lot more loving to their children, and they're just better people. Than the generations have become better. My grandfather had 19 children. My father had 11 children. I only had 8. So it's getting better. And my children only have 3.
Wow. So how's your relationship with your children?
It's, for the most part, it's very good. I have a few outliers and a few people that are glomming on to the cancel culture, and I've been canceled for a few of them. But
yeah, so cancel culture is a thing that we address here pretty intensively in this podcast. Are you open to talking about that part of your life? Do you feel comfortable getting into that vulnerable space with us?
Maybe. I don't know. No one's ever asked that question, Mark. So let's go. I think I'm okay with it.
Okay, so if at any point this feels like too much, we are not out to cause injury.
You can cancel
harm.
us.
I'll put the stop sign up.
Great.
Right.
So why is it that your children canceled you?
There are a few reasons. Part of the divorce that I had with their mother. I had all 8 children with my first wife. Part of the divorce decree with the mother set up something about student loans, and I was to pay a certain portion. I paid that portion, but apparently for the daughter, one of the daughters, it wasn't enough, and it didn't cover everything. So there's that. And then the other one, unintentionally, I offended her significant other. They have a weird relationship, and he's like in Alaska, and she was somewhere else, and they've had a more of a separate relationship, but they're still married. And it was just an odd thing. I just said something that I probably shouldn't have said about that. But so those 2 daughters.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. So out of 8, there's 2. And it's interesting that with the one and the gentleman who lives in Alaska, like that, a simple apology, it brings up this element that a person's experience, there's, as you were saying earlier, it's a choice. Like they have chosen that whatever it was you said, in light of the whole experience of you, that was enough to end a relationship with you right now.
Yeah. And the offense and the annoyance, they're not where I'm at, obviously. I really have a hard time being offended anymore. It's not the little things that people do. Sometimes they'll say, "You're really doing that?" And I'll ask them if they're really doing that, but I'm not judging them. I'm just asking. I'm not being annoyed at it. I'm just saying, I'm just trying to stay in my lane and do what I'm committed myself to do.
What's your awareness of how being offensive you're being, as opposed to being offended? What's your awareness of your own capacity to be offensive to people?
I think that my awareness of that, Mark, it's a great question. My awareness is the same awareness that I have of when people light up. And if you're using your observation skills, you'll know when they'll light up, you'll know when they'll turn dark. And when they turn dark, obviously, you said the wrong thing, and then apologize immediately. Don't wait. I mean, it's just that it's really helped me correct the situation by using those observation skills, and everybody has it. You don't have to pause the relationship anymore, Mark and Greg, and say, "Could you take this survey so I know how to love you?" End of that.
That'd be a great flyer to pass out on the bus as you're going down the aisle to get a seat. I want to
take the survey so you know who to sit next to.
That's right.
So what are the values? I mean, you spoke about Christianity, and I'm sure that's a core value, but setting that into sort of its perspective, what are your personal values that had you devote yourself to this endeavor? And what do you hope for humanity as a result of the impact of this game that you've created?
Great question, Mark. I'm going to explain it like this. The other day I was walking outside and I found this stick here. It's a walking stick, doesn't have any bark on it at all. One side of it's very, very nice, just beautiful. You can put your hand on there, not going to get a burn. On the other side, though, there's some points on there, and just, I call this the naughty side of the stick, and this is the nice side of the stick. I know Santa Claus has a stick like that too, naughty and nice. You probably didn't know that, but
he has a list. But I didn't know he had a stick that he uses to make the list.
Wow, that was
people that old. That's what they called it. They roll a scroll on a stick, and they called it sticks. That's what they called it, and it's like a book.
Cool. Back to the question. What are the core values?
Back to the question.
And what do you think the impact to humanity is that you're hoping for?
So when I realized that anger was on the naughty side of the stick, I wanted to run from that. I did not want that in my system. I did not want to be on that side of the spectrum. So the core value soon became what was be the opposite. And I chose love to be the opposite, on the nice side of the stick. And I realized I had 3 choices. I could stay the same by blaming other people, that I don't have to do anything. When you're not doing anything, you're kind of staying the same. I could become more angry, or I could become more loving. And I chose to do more loving. And I think humanity also could make that choice. And we need to make that choice. We've put way too much violence in the schools, way too much violence everywhere, on the road rage everywhere. And so what I've done with this is that put the die in the hands of some teachers in a private school locally. And they're working with it. They roll it every morning. At the end of the day, now the children have to report. Get that up there. They write what they rolled, what opportunities they saw to love in that way, and then what they did about those opportunities. So it's a roll the die in the morning. Class, we're watching for this type of behavior all day. At the end of the day, the last 10 to 15 minutes of the day is non-productive time anyway. The kids are antsy, they've been there all day, they know the bell's going to ring. It's not productive time. So take that time, make it productive, have them write. I'm talking probably K through 6 right now is where we're testing it, because they're in the classroom, the same classroom at the start of the day as they are at the end of the day. With that, a couple things happen. You've got a journal of that child for their first grade. So the teacher at the end of the day said, check mark, you did it. And over a year's period of time, now you've got a first grade love journal from that kid. I would have loved to have a first grade journal or a third grade journal or whatever. What did I love during that time? Was it I loving my teacher? What was it? What this will do is tamp down a lot of that misbehaving, because now, guess what? The kid's responsible. It's not the teacher's responsibility. It's not the principal's responsibility for that kid to behave. It's their own responsibility. It took me to age 35 to realize I'm responsible for my own stuff. These kids could learn it very early. And I think that would make a huge change in the world. That's for humanity. I think we really need that. Absolutely.
Thank you.
The timing seems perfect. I know with my own children, mindfulness practices have entered into the classroom as part of overall education of health and well-being.
Absolutely.
I have a question. How do you receive the decision of the two daughters with love?
I honor their decision. That's a great question, Greg. I honor their decision, and I still think about them on their birthdays. I still think about them often. I think about their one of them has children, the other one does not. I think about those grandchildren that they're really kind of holding back and not even allowing a relationship that way. And I think about that, and I mourn about that, but I can't really focus on that because, again, it's something I have no control over. It's their choice, and it's one of those things. I could be annoyed, I could be offended, but they're the ones that think I was defensive. And so to repair that, I've just got to do what I can do, and then just pray. And I can't. They really don't want any contact at all. So I can't write them a letter. I can't email them. I can't call them. I can't do any texting or anything like that. I can hear about them sometimes through other siblings of them, but I really can't do much at all. And so with that, I just focus on what I can do. And I think that's what I'm talking about when I stay in your lane.
Right.
Do what you can do. Don't worry about those things that you have no control over or things that you can't do. And I think that's going to tamp down anxiety in anybody listening in this podcast, that if they just focus on what they can do instead of what they can't do, they're really going to have a lot more peaceful life.
So when morning comes up, do you let it flow through you quickly, or do you feel you have an experience of turning away from it?
Greg, that's a great question. There are days of tears, obviously, and there's days that you'll have those private moments that way of mourning, absolutely mourning the cancellation of your fatherhood. It's really very difficult in that way. But again, I have no control over their choices. They've made their choice, and as far as that goes, it's I don't know what I can do about that.
So what just sparked for me is, instead of being a victim of the pain you feel and blaming them, you experience it, and it sounds like staying in your lane is you still hold them with love.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's powerful.
So they could come back at any time, and I would be glad to be apologetic for what I have done. And it's back to that Lord, is it I syndrome, that if you insert that into your life and say, is it my part of the relationship that has fallen apart? Can I be a better person? Can I be a better father? Can I be just a better person overall? And it's that choice, that you do have that choice. You do have control over that. And that's just focus on that. Try to be that person.
Yeah.
I found that with being single too, just that there may have a lot of single people that might be listening to this podcast, that if we strive to improve ourselves, strive to be that person that we want to have as a companion, be that quality of person, we're going to get that higher quality of person looking at us as well. Just rise to that level.
So are you saying you're still currently single after the second breakup?
No, I'm on. Just had my 6th anniversary with my third wife.
So this is your third marriage.
My third marriage.
Yeah.
Got it. I want to ask a question about how your children were raised in light of your Christian focus, and whether the people that are currently having a struggle in your relationship with you, were they also people who struggled with accepting this aspect of Christianity into their lives?
For the most part, they did not struggle with that, Mark. They're accepting. There are other children that did not accept, but I still have a good relationship with them. So it's not a criteria to accept the Christian beliefs for my love to have that love exchange. It's not a criteria. I don't know if that was part of your question.
No, I wasn't implying that. I was looking for to ask the question a separate way. Did you raise all your children that way? And did you see a correlation between those who felt a kinship to Christianity and adopted it, and those who didn't? And was there a correlation to those who felt, I hate using this word, who you are not in connection with? Well, I'll use that instead of cancel. And what you just said was no, there's no correlation there.
No, there's not. In fact, the ones that I'm not in communication with, they do not attend church right now, but that happened long after they were gone. And we knew it was a choice in their adult life. So I'm not sure that I had a lot of impact in that way. Not, at least not for me. I don't take any responsibility for their choices. After they're an adult, it was their choice.
Now, I want to acknowledge that the question I'm about to ask you might be better asked to a priest, but I really am interested in your answer. Why did God create anger?
Why did God create? That's a great question. Nobody's ever asked me that. And how would I know? I think that maybe what the only things that I can probably the easiest way to answer that is back with the stick. There's two sides of the stick, but you pick up both ends when you pick up the stick. And I think that we absolutely need contrast in our life that way. We need the contrast to know the good from the evil, and to be able to make our decisions in that way. So I'm an advocate of having those choices, advocate of having the opposition. I like to explain it this way too, that sometimes people are down on their luck, or the spokes of the wheels are down, and sometimes they're up. And it just depends on the cycle of life, wherever you're at. That I think it's necessary to. You see this picture behind me, and those listening probably can't see this online, but I have a picture of a sunrise, and it's on a lake, and the lake's perfectly reflecting the sunrise. And I used to have a vending route that I did. I was driving. I left in early morning, before dawn, and I come back after sunset. So it took me about 6 months of doing that before I realized, oh, the epiphany was the very best sunsets and the very best sunrises all have clouds. We all have these trials in our life, and I think we have that adversity in our life for a specific reason. At the end of that cloud, when you're through it, you'll be able to sometimes see that silver lining of the cloud. You'll be able to have that beautiful sunrise or beautiful sunset in a new chapter of your life, or maybe even at the end of your life. So and I think that analogy probably says it the best. You
can use that inspiration to create a game, or you can use that to create another way of being in your life that's more a reflection of the lesson.
Absolutely. And I believe that the adversity, the necessity became the mother of invention for the game and how to overcome that adversity.
So kind of hitching on to Mark's question about why God created anger, was Jesus, in your own thoughts, of course, when he was throwing out the money changers from the temple, was that a place of anger? Was he angry in that moment?
I think that it was more of a frustration that these people that were doing the money changing in the temple were actually, profiting very highly on the immigrants, on people that came to town that had to change their money. They should not have been in the temple. It's not a temple's ordinance. It's not a sacred right for exchanging money. They were in the wrong place. They absolutely were in the wrong place. He was cleaning the temple, just as each one of us have a responsibility to clean our own house, clean our own temple. That's exactly what he's doing. So I think it was a frustration that these people violated the temple. They violated in that way. He had to throw them out.
So that brings up the question, was that righteous anger?
I believe so, absolutely.
So then there is a righteous function for anger.
I think there is, and I think that there's an appropriate time and an appropriate place. But when it hurts someone else, when it really puts down people, that's not righteous anger. I think that when there's a correction that needs to be made, that would be righteous anger.
And you exemplified with your stick metaphor that sometimes seeing that darker aspect is what helps us understand the true value of the lighter aspect.
Exactly. So you can't turn on the dark. You ever heard of anybody turning on the dark?
No, you turn it off.
You turn on the light.
Right.
You turn on the light. And that's how you get to light. You turn on the light.
Beautiful.
I like that.
So how do people, they can go to rolloflove.com to get your game.
Absolutely.
And
rolloflove.com has the journal. It has the book. It has the game in a bundle right now. It's on sale. It's a whole lot less than even just one session of therapy. I highly recommend it. $30.
Got it. So there's a question that we ask on this show that we ask all our guests, and I'm not sure how this question is going to land with you, but we're going to ask it because it's a tradition. Okay, so here's the question. Would you prefer the music of the Foo Fighters or Eminem?
I don't know either one of those groups.
Awesome. That's the first time we've gotten that answer.
Well, I'm out of the loop on that. So sorry, Mark. That's I don't know.
No apologies necessary. I'm grateful for the example that you're setting in the way of gamification of this complex human problem. And I see that this game is not a game that you win or lose. This is a game that you just play forever. I love that. I love that concept about it too. It's you just play forever. And that as long as you're playing this game, which is how much love can I give and in what kind of ways, then we're all winning. Absolutely.
Yeah. I agree. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Amen.
Thank you for being on the show today. Lovely. We'll look forward to the next time we talk, and we'll keep an eye on you at rolloflove.com.
Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you, Greg. Great
Thank
question.
you, Paul. Really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Very fun time.
Recording stopped.